Ethan Carter lived a simple life. He was just like any other teenager growing up in a small farming town in Iowa. His days were filled with chores on the family farm, homework at the kitchen table, and occasional laughs with his best friend, Clara Bennett. Life wasn't easy, but Ethan didn't mind. He liked being close to nature, helping his parents tend to their fields of corn under the wide open sky. It gave him a sense of purpose that not many kids his age could understand. But there was one thing Ethan didn't enjoy: school. Not because he hated learning. Far from it. Ethan actually loved reading books and solving problems in math and science. What he didn't like was how different he felt compared to everyone else. Most of the students at Lincoln High came from families who either owned businesses in town or commuted from nearby cities. They wore fancy clothes, carried the latest gadgets, and talked about things Ethan couldn't relate to. He stuck out like a sore thumb with his hand-me-down jeans and shoes that had seen better days. Still, Ethan tried his best to blend in. He kept quiet during class discussions unless called upon, avoided drawing attention to himself, and spent most of his free time working on projects that interested him. One of those projects was an idea he'd been tinkering with for months: a solar-powered irrigation system designed to help farmers save water and energy. It was something he hoped would make life easier for people like his parents someday. But no one at school knew about it. To them, Ethan was just the farmer's son, a label he sometimes resented but mostly ignored. Things might have stayed this way if it weren't for Jake Monroe. Jake was everything Ethan wasn't: rich, popular, and loud. He drove a flashy sports car to school every day, wore designer clothes, and always seemed to be surrounded by friends. Jake had a knack for making fun of anyone he thought was beneath him, and unfortunately for Ethan, he often found himself on the receiving end of Jake's insults. It all started during lunch one afternoon. Ethan was sitting alone at a corner table, eating the sandwich his mom had packed for him. He didn't notice Jake approaching until he heard his voice. "Hey, dirt poor," Jake sneered, leaning against the table. "What's that you're eating? Cornbread? Did your dad grow it himself?" Ethan clenched his fists but forced himself to stay calm. He wasn't going to let Jake get to him. "Leave me alone, Jake," he muttered, keeping his eyes on his food. "Oh, come on," Jake continued, grinning as his friend snickered behind him. "I'm just curious. How does it feel knowing you'll never amount to anything? You'll probably end up driving a tractor for the rest of your life." That comment stung more than Ethan cared to admit. He knew Jake was just trying to provoke him, but the words hit too close to home. For years, Ethan had wondered if Jake was right. Would he ever escape the shadow of his family's farm? Would anyone take him seriously when they saw him as nothing more than a poor farmer's kid? Clara noticed the tension from across the cafeteria and hurried over. "Back off, Jake," she said firmly, standing between him and Ethan. "Can't you see you're bothering him?" Jake smirked. "Relax, Clara, I'm just having a little fun." With that, he turned and walked away, leaving Ethan fuming silently. The encounter should have ended there, but fate had other plans. Later that day, Ethan and Jake crossed paths again in the hallway. This time, Jake decided to take things further. As Ethan opened his locker to grab his books, Jake leaned casually against the adjacent one. "You know," he said loudly enough for others to hear, "you really need to upgrade your wardrobe. Those sneakers look like they've been through a tornado." Ethan froze, gripping the strap of his backpack tightly. He glanced down at his shoes. They were scuffed and patched up in places, but they still worked fine. Still, hearing Jake mock them in front of everyone made his face burn. With embarrassment, "Why don't you shut up?" Ethan snapped, turning to glare at Jake. Jake raised an eyebrow, clearly amused. "Or what? You gonna cry, farm boy?" Something inside Ethan snapped. All the frustration, the years of feeling inferior, the constant reminders of how different he was, it all boiled over in that moment. Without thinking, Ethan shoved Jake hard against the locker. The sound echoed through the hallway, silencing everyone around them. For a split second, Ethan felt a surge of satisfaction as Jake stumbled back, looking shocked. But then reality set in. Principal Harris appeared from around the corner, his expression grim. "What is going on here?" he demanded, looking from Ethan to Jake. It was him. Jake exclaimed, pointing accusingly at Ethan. "He attacked me." Principal Harris sighed heavily. "Ethan, my office. Now." As Ethan followed the principal down the hallway, he could feel the weight of everyone's stares. Some looked sympathetic, while others whispered judgmentally. Clara caught up to him briefly, her eyes filled heavy with concern. "Are you okay?" she asked softly. Ethan shook his head. "I messed up, Clara. I really messed up." The meeting with Principal Harris was short but painful. Despite Ethan's attempts to explain what happened, the decision was final: expulsion. Harris explained that violence was unacceptable, regardless of the circumstances. Ethan left the office feeling numb, unsure how to face his parents. When he got home that evening, his mother greeted him with a warm smile. "How was your day, sweetheart?" she asked. Ethan hesitated, his heart sinking. "Mom, Dad, we need to talk." They sat together at the kitchen table, the same table where Ethan had spent countless nights studying. When he told them about the fight and his expulsion, the room fell silent. His father rubbed his temples, clearly struggling to process the news. Finally, his mother reached out and took his hand. "We'll figure this out, Ethan," she said, gently. "You're a good kid. We know you didn't mean to cause trouble." Her words brought tears to Ethan's eyes. He wanted to believe her, but deep down, he couldn't shake the feeling that he'd let everyone down, including himself. Little did Ethan know, the events of that day were about to set off a chain reaction that would change his life forever. The next morning, Ethan woke up earlier than usual. The weight of his expulsion still hung over him like a storm cloud. He lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying the events of the previous day in his mind. Every time he thought about how disappointed his parents must feel, his chest tightened. He wondered if things would ever go back to normal, or if they could even get worse. By the time he dragged himself out of bed, the sun was already rising over the fields. His father was outside checking the irrigation system, while his mother prepared breakfast in the kitchen. Ethan joined her, helping set the table without saying much. The silence between them felt heavy, but it wasn't uncomfortable. His mother knew better than to push him to talk before he was ready. After breakfast, Ethan decided to take a walk. He needed some fresh air to clear his head. As he strolled along the dirt path that led from their farmhouse to the main road, he noticed something unusual in the distance. At first, he thought it was just the wind rustling through the trees, but then he heard it. A low, rhythmic whirring sound growing louder by the second. Curious, Ethan quickened his pace until he reached the edge of their property. From there, he could see Lincoln High School's football field in the distance, and hovering above it was a helicopter. Not just any helicopter, a sleek black one with the words Titan Industries written boldly on its side. Ethan squinted, trying to make sense of what he was seeing. What was a corporate helicopter doing at a small-town high school? Before he could think too much about it, his phone buzzed in his pocket. It was Clara. "Ethan, are you watching this?" she exclaimed, her voice brimming with excitement. "There's a helicopter at school. Everyone's freaking out." "I see it," Ethan replied, still staring at the scene. "Do you know why it's here?" "No idea," Clara admitted. "But Principal Harris looks like he's about to have a heart attack. There are cameras everywhere, and people are saying someone important is inside." Ethan didn't respond right away. Instead, he watched as the helicopter descended smoothly onto the field. Moments later, a man stepped out. Even from a distance, Ethan could tell he was someone powerful. He wore a tailored suit, dark sunglasses, and carried himself with an air of authority. Two assistants followed closely behind him, holding tablets and folders. "Who is that guy?" Ethan asked aloud, though Clara couldn't hear him. Back at the school, chaos erupted. Students crowded around the field, pointing and whispering excitedly. Teachers tried to maintain order, but it was no use. Everyone wanted to know who the mystery visitor was and why he had chosen their tiny school for a visit. Jake Monroe stood near the front of the crowd, smirking as if he already knew something everyone else didn't. Principal Harris approached the man cautiously, wiping sweat from his brow. After a brief exchange, the man turned to address the students. He removed his sunglasses, revealing sharp blue eyes that scanned the crowd with purpose. When he spoke, his voice carried clearly, commanding attention. "My name is Ryan Dalton," he began. "I'm the CEO of Titan Industries. I'm here because I heard about a young man named Ethan Carter." At the mention of Ethan's name, the entire crowd gasped. Ethan froze where he stood, his heart pounding. Why was this billionaire talking about him? What did he want? Ryan continued, unfazed by the murmurs rippling through the audience. "From what I've learned, Ethan has faced some challenges recently. But I also know that he has incredible potential. That's why I'm here, to offer him an opportunity." Jake rolled his eyes, muttering something under his breath about rich people meddling in things that didn't concern them. Clara elbowed him sharply, silencing him. She turned to look at the field again, her eyes wide with disbelief. Could this really be happening? Meanwhile, Ethan stood rooted to the spot, unsure whether to laugh or cry. Was this some kind of prank? Had Jake somehow orchestrated this to humiliate him further? Or was Ryan Dalton serious about offering him an opportunity? The questions swirled in his mind, making it hard to focus. Later that afternoon, Ryan Dalton arrived at Ethan's house. Ethan's parents greeted him politely, though they seemed just as confused as their son. They invited him inside, where he explained the reason for his visit. Ryan revealed that he had grown up on a farm himself, in a town not unlike theirs. He understood the struggles of rural communities and admired those who worked hard despite limited resources. More importantly, Ryan told them about Ethan's science project, the solar-powered irrigation system. Somehow he had discovered it online when Ethan submitted it to a national competition months ago. Though Ethan hadn't won, Ryan believed the project showed remarkable ingenuity and foresight. He offered Ethan a chance to join Titan Industries' Youth Innovation Program, a prestigious initiative designed to mentor talented teenagers and provide them with the tools to develop groundbreaking technologies. Ethan listened intently, barely able to believe what he was hearing. Him? Joining a program run by one of the biggest tech companies in the world? It sounded too good to be true. But Ryan's sincerity was undeniable. He spoke passionately about the importance of giving young people opportunities to shine, regardless of their backgrounds. When Ryan finished explaining, he looked directly at Ethan. "What do you say, Ethan? Are you willing to give it a shot?" Ethan hesitated. On one hand, this was the kind of opportunity most people dreamed of. On the other hand, he couldn't shake the feeling that he didn't deserve it. Not after everything that had happened. He glanced at his parents, who exchanged a meaningful look before nodding slightly. Finally, Ethan took a deep breath and nodded. "Okay," he said softly. "I'll do it." Ryan smiled, clearly pleased with the response. "Good choice. You won't regret it." As the meeting wrapped up, Ethan's mind raced with possibilities. For the first time in days, he felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe being expelled wasn't the end of the world. Maybe it was just the beginning of something bigger. Later that evening, Ethan called Clara to tell her the news. She squealed with excitement, practically jumping through the phone. "This is amazing, Ethan," she exclaimed. "You're going to change the world." "I don't know about that," Ethan replied, laughing nervously. "But I guess we'll find out." As they talked, Ethan realized something important. No matter what challenges lay ahead, he wouldn't face them alone. With Clara cheering him on, his parents supporting him, and Ryan Dalton believing in him, he felt ready to take on whatever came next. And so, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting golden light across the fields, Ethan allowed himself to dream, for the first time in a long while, about a future full of promise and possibility. Ethan's first day in Chicago felt like stepping into another world. The bustling city streets were nothing like the quiet country roads he was used to. Skyscrapers towered above him, their glass facades reflecting the morning sunlight. Cars honked impatiently and people rushed by, glued to their phones or talking animatedly. Ethan clutched his duffel bag tightly, feeling both excited and overwhelmed. Ryan Dalton had arranged for Ethan to stay in a cozy apartment near Titan Industries headquarters. It wasn't luxurious, but it was clean and comfortable, a place where Ethan could focus on his work without distractions. On his first morning, Ryan personally picked him up and drove him to the company's innovation center. As they entered the building, Ethan's jaw dropped. The facility was unlike anything he'd ever seen. Floor-to-ceiling windows let in natural light, and the open layout buzzed with energy. Teens his age moved between stations, working on everything, from robotics to artificial intelligence. "This is where you'll be spending most of your time," Ryan said, gesturing toward the lab area. "You'll meet the rest of the team shortly." Ethan nodded, trying to take it all in. He spotted a girl with curly black hair typing furiously on a laptop, her fingers flying across the keyboard. Nearby, a boy with glasses tinkered with what looked like a small drone. Everyone seemed so confident and skilled, and Ethan couldn't help but wonder if he belonged here. As if reading his mind, Ryan placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "Don't worry, Ethan, you earned your spot here. Just be yourself and you'll do great." Soon after, Ethan was introduced to the team. There were 6 teens in total, each specializing in different areas of technology. Mia Torres, the coding prodigy, greeted him with a warm smile. "Hey, I've heard about your irrigation project," she said. "It's really impressive." "Thanks," Ethan replied, feeling a mix of pride and nervousness. "I'm looking forward to learning from all of you." Next, he met Owen Grayson, who was obsessed with robotics. Owen immediately started explaining how his latest invention, a robot capable of sorting recyclables, worked. Ethan listened intently, even though some of the technical terms went over his head. Despite feeling out of place, he appreciated how welcoming everyone was. Over the next few weeks, Ethan threw himself into the program. Each participant was tasked with developing a project that addressed real-world problems. For Ethan, this meant refining his solar-powered irrigation system. With access to cutting-edge tools and guidance from mentors, he made rapid progress. His design became more efficient, incorporating features he'd only dreamed of back home. But adapting to city life wasn't easy. At night, when the hum of traffic faded and the lights of the skyline blinked outside his window, Ethan often found himself missing the simplicity of the farm. He missed waking up to the sound of roosters crowing and the smell of fresh soil. Most of all, he missed his family and Clara. Their daily video calls helped ease the loneliness, but it wasn't the same as being there in person. Clara always encouraged him during these conversations. "You're doing amazing, Ethan," she'd say. "Just imagine how proud your parents will be when they see what you've accomplished." Her words gave him strength, especially when self-doubt crept in. Some days, Ethan questioned whether he truly deserved to be part of the program. Compared to Mia, whose code could solve complex algorithms in seconds, or Owen, whose robot seemed almost lifelike, Ethan sometimes felt like an imposter. But then he'd remind himself why he was there: to make a difference, not to compete. 1. Evening, after a particularly grueling day of troubleshooting, Ethan decided to take a walk around the city. He wandered aimlessly, letting the cool breeze clear his mind. Eventually, he found himself near Millennium Park, where the famous Cloud Gate sculpture gleamed under the moonlight. Tourists snapped photos, and street performers entertained passers-by. For a moment, Ethan forgot about deadlines and expectations. He simply stood there, marveling at the beauty of the city. That's when he bumped into Mia. She was sitting on a bench scrolling through her phone. When she saw Ethan, she smiled. "Couldn't sleep either." "Guess not," Ethan admitted, taking a seat beside her. They chatted for a while, sharing stories about their hometowns and dreams for the future. Mia confessed that she sometimes felt overwhelmed too, despite appearing confident. "We all have our moments," she said, "but that's what makes us human." Her honesty comforted Ethan. For the first time since arriving in Chicago, he realized he wasn't alone in feeling out of his depth. Everyone struggled in their own way. It was just part of growing. The turning point came a few weeks later during a group presentation. Each participant showcased their progress, explaining how their projects could impact the world. When it was Ethan's turn, he took a deep breath and stepped up to the podium. He talked about his inspiration, the long hours his parents spent tending to their crops, and how his system could help farmers conserve water and reduce costs. To his surprise, the audience listened intently, asking thoughtful questions afterward. Afterward, Ryan pulled him aside. "You did well today, Ethan," he said. "Your passion shines through. Keep going. You're onto something special." Encouraged by the feedback, Ethan doubled down on his efforts. With Mia's help, he added a user-friendly interface to his system, making it accessible even to those unfamiliar with technology. Owen contributed by designing a durable casing to protect the device from harsh weather conditions. Slowly but surely, Ethan's project transformed from a simple idea into a fully functional prototype. Back in Iowa, news of Ethan's achievements spread. Principal Harris reinstated him, acknowledging that expelling him had been a mistake. Even Jake Monroe stopped mocking him, though Ethan suspected it was more out of respect for Ryan Dalton than genuine admiration. Through it all, Ethan remained grounded. He never forgot where he came from or the people who supported him along the way. As he worked tirelessly in Chicago, he kept one goal in mind: to create something that would benefit not just himself, but his community and beyond. And as the weeks turned into months, Ethan began to see glimpses of the future. A future shaped by hard work, resilience, and the belief that anyone, no matter their background, could achieve greatness. The final presentation day arrived sooner than Ethan expected. It felt like only yesterday he had stepped into the Innovation Center for the first time, wide-eyed and unsure of himself. Now, months later, he stood alongside Mia, Owen, and the rest of the team, ready to showcase their hard work to a panel of judges from Titan Industries, and even some invited guests from the media. Ethan's project, the solar-powered irrigation system, had evolved far beyond what he ever imagined. With Mia's coding expertise, Owen's engineering skills, and input from the entire team, the system now included advanced sensors that could detect soil moisture levels, predict weather patterns, and adjust water usage automatically. A small drone acted as the centerpiece of the setup, flying over fields to monitor crop health and relay real-time data to farmers' smartphones. It was efficient, sustainable, and designed specifically to help small-scale farmers thrive in challenging conditions. As Ethan prepared for his turn to present, he couldn't help but feel nervous. The room was packed with people: mentors, investors, reporters, and even a few students who had traveled from Lincoln High to support him. Clara sat near the front, waving enthusiastically when she caught his eye. Seeing her smile gave him a boost of confidence. His parents weren't able to attend due to farm duties, but they had sent him a heartfelt voice message earlier that morning, reminding him how proud they were of everything he'd accomplished. When Ethan's name was called, he walked up to the podium with steady steps. He glanced at the judges briefly before turning to address the audience. "Good morning," he began, his voice clear despite the knot in his stomach. "My name is Ethan Carter, and I'm here today to talk about my project, a solar-powered irrigation system designed to help farmers save water, energy, and time." He paused, letting his words sink in. Then, using a remote control, he activated the prototype sitting on the table beside him. The small drone sprang to life, its propellers humming softly as it lifted off the ground. It hovered gracefully above a scale model of a farm field, scanning the tiny rows of crops below. On the large screen behind him, colorful graphs and maps appeared, showing how the system analyzed soil moisture levels and adjusted water flow accordingly. "This isn't just about technology," Ethan continued. "It's about helping communities like mine, communities where farming is more than just a job. It's a way of life. Growing up on a farm taught me the value of hard work, but it also showed me the struggles farmers face every day. Droughts, rising costs, and outdated equipment can make it nearly impossible to succeed. That's why I wanted to create something affordable, easy to use, and environmentally friendly." The judges leaned forward, clearly intrigued. One of them raised a hand to ask a question. "How does your system compare to existing solutions on the market?" Ethan nodded, expecting this question. "Most commercial irrigation systems are expensive and complicated, making them inaccessible to smaller farms. My design focuses on simplicity and affordability." By using solar power and open-source software, we've kept costs low while maintaining high efficiency. Plus, the drone component adds an extra layer of precision that traditional systems lack. Another judge chimed in. What inspired you to pursue this idea? Ethan smiled faintly, thinking back to all the mornings he'd spent working alongside his parents in the fields. I grew up watching my family struggle to keep our farm running smoothly. They worked long hours under harsh conditions, often worrying about whether there would be enough rain or if the wells would dry up. I wanted to find a way to lighten that burden, not just for them, but for farmers everywhere. His honesty resonated with the audience. Murmurs of approval rippled through the room, and Ethan noticed Ryan Dalton nodding approvingly from the sidelines. Encouraged by the positive response, Ethan wrapped up his presentation with a heartfelt message. This project wouldn't have been possible without the support of my family, friends, and teammates. And most importantly, it wouldn't exist without the belief that no matter where you come from, you can still make a difference. Thank you. When he finished speaking, the room erupted into applause. Even Jake Monroe, who had reluctantly tagged, along with Clara, clapped half-heartedly, unable to deny the impact of Ethan's work. As Ethan returned to his seat, Mia gave him a thumbs up, whispering, "You nailed it." After all the presentations concluded, the judges retreated to deliberate. The wait felt endless, but Ethan tried to stay calm. He chatted with Clara and the others, laughing about how surreal the experience had been. For once, he didn't dwell on self-doubt or worry about failure. He reminded himself that he'd already achieved so much simply by getting this far. Finally, the head judge returned to announce the results. Each participant demonstrated incredible talent and dedication, she said, addressing the crowd. But today we're awarding the top prize to a young innovator whose project not only addresses a pressing global issue, but also reflects deep personal commitment and ingenuity. Congratulations to Ethan Carter. The room erupted again, louder this time. Ethan froze for a moment, unsure if he'd heard correctly. Then Mia nudged him, urging him to stand up. As he made his way to the stage, cameras flashed, capturing his stunned expression. When he shook hands with the judges and accepted the trophy, he couldn't stop smiling. This wasn't just a win for him. It was a victory for everyone who had believed in him along the way. Ryan Dalton joined him on stage, placing a hand on his shoulder. Ethan, you've proven that determination and creativity can change the world. I'm honored to have played a small part in your journey. Back home in Iowa, news of Ethan's success spread quickly. Local newspapers ran stories about the farmer's son who conquered Chicago, and Principal Harris officially reinstated him as a student, calling it an overdue correction. Even Jake stopped teasing Ethan altogether, though he still avoided direct conversations with him. Over the summer, Ethan returned to his hometown, eager to share what he'd learned. With Ryan's blessing, he partnered with Titan Industries to bring affordable versions of his irrigation system to local farmers. Workshops were held to teach people how to use the technology, and soon, word spread across neighboring counties. Farmers who had struggled for years found new hope, thanks to Ethan's invention. Clara visited the farm often during those months, marveling at how much Ethan had grown, not just as an inventor, but as a person. "You've changed so much," she told him one evening as they watched the sunset together. "But you're still the same Ethan I've always known, humble, kind, and determined." Ethan grinned. "I guess I've learned that failure isn't the end. Sometimes it's just the beginning of something better." As the golden light faded over the fields, Ethan reflected on how far he'd come, from the frustration of being expelled to the triumph of standing on stage in Chicago. Every step of his journey had shaped him into the person he was today. He knew challenges lay ahead, but he faced them with renewed courage and purpose. And as he stood there, surrounded by the land he loved and the people who mattered most, Ethan realized something important. Success wasn't about fame or fortune. It was about making a difference in your own life, in your community, and in the world. The summer flew by faster than Ethan could have imagined. Days turned into weeks as he worked tirelessly to bring his invention to life in the fields of Iowa. With the support of Titan Industries, Ethan's solar-powered irrigation system began transforming the way local farmers approached their work. What started as a single prototype quickly expanded into multiple units, each tailored to meet the unique needs of different farms. Farmers who had once relied on outdated methods now embraced technology that saved water, reduced costs, and improved crop yields. Ethan traveled from farm to farm, teaching people how to use the system and addressing any concerns they had. At first, some were skeptical. After all, adopting new technology wasn't always easy, especially for those who had spent decades doing things the old-fashioned way. But Ethan's patience and genuine care won them over. He didn't just explain how the system worked. He listened to their stories, understood their struggles, and showed them how his invention could make their lives easier. One evening, after spending hours helping an elderly farmer named Mr. Peterson install the system, on his property, Ethan sat on the edge of the field, watching the sun dip below the horizon. The sky was painted in shades of orange and pink, and the air smelled sweet with freshly harvested corn. It was moments like these that reminded Ethan why he loved growing up in such a simple place. No matter where life took him, this land would always feel like home. Clara joined him a few minutes later, carrying 2 bottles of lemonade. "You've been working nonstop," she said, handing him one. "Take a break." Ethan smiled gratefully, taking a sip. "Thanks, I needed this." "You deserve it," Clara replied, sitting down beside him. "Look at everything you've done already. These farmers are thriving because of you." "It's not just me," Ethan said humbly. "Mia helped write the code, Owen designed the hardware, and Ryan gave us the resources we needed. Plus, I couldn't have done any of it without my family or you cheering me on." "Well, don't forget about yourself," Clara teased lightly. "You're the one who came up with the idea and stuck with it when things got tough." Her words made Ethan think about how far he'd come since the day he was expelled from school. Back then he felt like a failure, someone who didn't belong anywhere. Now he realized that failure wasn't the end. It was just another step on the journey. Every challenge he faced had taught him something valuable, whether it was resilience, humility, or the importance of believing in himself. As the weeks went by, news of Ethan's success continued to spread beyond Iowa. Articles about his invention appeared in national magazines, highlighting how a teenager from a small farming town had created a solution to combat drought and conserve resources. Environmental organizations praised the system for its sustainability, while agricultural experts called it a game changer for rural communities worldwide. One morning, Ethan received an email from Ryan Dalton inviting him to speak at a global summit on sustainable agriculture. The event would take place in New York City and bring together leaders from around the world to discuss innovative ways to address food security and climate change. Ethan stared at the screen in disbelief. Him? Speaking at an international conference? "Are you going to do it?" Clara asked when he told her about the invitation. "I don't know," Ethan admitted. "It's a huge opportunity, but what if I mess up?" "You won't," Clara said firmly. "You've already proven yourself. Just tell your story, the same way you did during the competition. People will listen because it's real." With Clara's encouragement, Ethan accepted the invitation. Preparing for the summit was nerve-wracking, but he poured his heart into crafting a speech that reflected not only his achievements, but also the lessons he'd learned along the way. When the big day arrived, he stood before an audience of hundreds, sharing his journey from being expelled to becoming an innovator whose work inspired others. By the end of his talk, the room erupted into applause. Delegates approached him afterward, congratulating him and asking questions about scaling his project globally. For the first time, Ethan allowed himself to dream bigger, to envision a future where his invention could benefit not just his hometown, but farms across the planet. When he returned to Iowa, Ethan found that his efforts had sparked a renewed sense of pride in the community. Neighbors who rarely spoke to one another began collaborating, pooling resources to implement sustainable practices. Schools incorporated STEM programs inspired by Ethan's story, encouraging students to pursue careers in science and technology. Even Jake Monroe seemed to soften, occasionally nodding in acknowledgement when their paths crossed. But perhaps the most meaningful moment came when Ethan's parents surprised him with a celebration dinner. They invited everyone who had supported him, from Clara and Mr. Peterson to teachers from Lincoln High. As they gathered around the table, laughter filling the room, Ethan felt overwhelmed with gratitude. "You've done so much more than invent a machine," his mother said, raising a glass. "You've reminded us all that no matter where we come from, we can achieve great things if we believe in ourselves." Tears welled up in Ethan's eyes as he looked around the table. These were the people who had shaped him, believed in him, and stood by him through every high and low. Without them, none of this would have been possible. As the night drew to a close, Ethan stepped outside to clear his head. The stars twinkled brightly above, and the cool breeze carried the faint scent of earth. He thought about the challenges ahead, the obstacles he would face as he worked to expand his project globally, but he wasn't afraid anymore. He knew he wouldn't have to face them alone. Clara joined him a few minutes later, leaning against the porch railing. "What are you thinking about?" she asked softly. "The future," Ethan replied. "There's still so much to do, but I'm ready for it." She smiled, nudging him playfully. "Good, because the world needs more people like you." Ethan chuckled, looking out at the fields bathed in moonlight. For the first time in his life, he truly felt like he belonged, not just to this place but to something greater. His journey had been unpredictable, filled with ups and downs, but it had led him exactly where he was meant to be. And as he stood there, surrounded by the people and land he loved, Ethan knew one thing for certain. No matter what challenges lay ahead, he would face them with courage, determination, and an unwavering belief in the power of hard work and kindness.